Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. This is a New York Post article, and if you look down, the New York Post article talks about, we could just go, Comey will reportedly turn himself in on Friday for the arraignment in Virginia. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen. This is after, of course, the indictments, 2 counts, placeholder indictment for a superseding indictment with more charges. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. We know, ladies and gentlemen, we know that more indictments are going to take place. More people will be arrested. And just hit subscribe. Your super chat support is greatly appreciated. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel after this. The link will be below in the description, but also in the description of the last live stream, which is doing quite well. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe. More indictments, arrests are imminent.
More charges are coming for Comey and more former intel officials. Watch.
Comey has long been a liar, a leaker. He's dishonest. He ruined the FBI. He will be lucky if there is not a grand conspiracy charge brought, which is really what should be brought against probably about 24 characters in the United States over the last 7-8 years.
Should there be more charges against Jim Comey?
Very specific, and it's over whether or not he lied on this one part. The larger part is whether or not you can bring a kind of grand conspiracy case. And, people talk about, there's the law, which is, lying to Congress, lying to the FBI, but there's also a term in there called misleading. And what a lot of these guys did is they made up things using intelligence that didn't exist, but acted like they knew something that actually wasn't there, and they lied and misled the American people. The only intelligence that they had is that the Russians were very well aware of Clinton's plan, and they actually not only thought Clinton was going to win, but likely preferred that she would win. So going back to the cover-up of her missing emails, that, by the way, are still missing, they all got involved in this plan. They all got the FBI exercise.
President Trump was asked about the investigation on Friday. He did not mince words on just what he thinks of Comey.
Justice, or is it about revenge?
It's about justice, really. It's not revenge. It's about justice. It's also about the fact that you can't let this go on. They are sick, radical left people, and they can't get away with it. And Comey was one of the people. He wasn't the biggest, but he's a dirty cop. He's always been a dirty cop. Everybody knew it.
Yeah, the question now is, will we see a bigger charge here, Liz Peek? You heard what Devin Nunes said, and I think the whole crux of this idea is the fact that they misled the court. They misled the American. Trump, watch this.
He's presumed innocent until proven otherwise. If I'm the Department of Justice, I better get my best lawyers on the field, because Patrick Fitzgerald, Comey's lawyer, is a great lawyer. But the idea he leaked classified information to create a narrative politically, I think that's a strong case. But there's so much else. In 2016, Comey received a memo from the intelligence community, an investigative lead, suggesting that it was Hillary Clinton's campaign who signed off on the plan to link Trump to Russia to avoid her problems. Now, the question is, did they ever take that allegation seriously? He told me that doesn't ring a bell when I asked him in 2020. Can you imagine the Republican candidate for president, that you got a memo from the CIA saying it may be his opponent who's starting this line of inquiry, and the FBI did nothing about it?
So Comey was given the information. He's given the data, the knowledge, the intelligence that it was Clinton that created the dossier, and that Brennan knew also. John Brennan, Comey, others involved knew this. Everybody knew that it was Clinton and the DNC that started the whole thing. It's obvious. It was literally, they had a dossier literally purchased by Trump's political rival. Could you imagine what the Wall Street Journal or what the Washington Post or what the New York Times would do, or what MSNBC and CNN? The outrage would be heard throughout the universe if Trump and Giuliani purchased a dossier that said Hillary and President Obama and Bill Clinton and other Democrats were in a Moscow hotel room. I mean, BuzzFeed would never publish that, but they had no problem publishing the Steele dossier against Trump.
So Patel's going to tell me of whether or not they opened up an investigation. So every time there was some exculpatory information, the court never heard about it.
Yeah.
Every person who signed the Carter Page warrant said, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have signed it. Comey knew then what we all know now and ignored it. I believe he withheld exculpatory information from the court because he wanted Trump to be found guilty. The memo from the Intel Committee in September 2016 was addressed to Comey, suggesting Hillary Clinton was behind this, and a copy went to Strzok. Did they take it seriously? I want to know that answer to that question.
So, Liz Peek.
So there was exculpatory evidence. There was evidence that exonerated President Trump in 2015 and 2016. In 2016, they knew he was innocent. Check this out. This is the current Central Intelligence Agency CIA chief, John Radcliffe.
Did you make the decision not to recommend criminal charges relating to classified information before or after Hillary Clinton was interviewed by the FBI on July the 2nd?
After.
Okay, then I'm going to need your help in trying to understand.
That's perjury right there. There's documentation that there's public record knowledge, or in terms of reporting, that Comey made his decision before, not after.
And how that's possible. I think there's a lot of prosecutors or former prosecutors that are shaking our heads in how that could be the case. Because if there was ever any real possibility that Hillary Clinton might be charged for something that she admitted to on July the 2nd, why would two of the central witnesses in a potential prosecution against her be allowed to sit in the same room to hear the testimony? Now, I've heard your earlier answers today. You said that, well, it was because the interview was voluntary and they were her lawyers. But I think you're skirting the real issue there, Director. First of all, the fact that it was voluntary, it didn't have to be, right? You could have impaneled an investigative grand jury. She could have been subpoenaed. And I know you've said that you can't comment on that. And I don't really care about the decision about whether or not there should have been a grand jury here. But since you didn't have one, it goes to the issue at hand about whether or not this interview should have ever taken place. With due respect to the answers that you've given, the FBI and the Department of Justice absolutely control whether or not an interview is going to take place with other witnesses in the room, because the simple truth is, if under the circumstances as you've described, those interviews never take place. If there was ever any possibility that something Hillary Clinton might have said on July 2nd could have possibly resulted in criminal charges that might possibly resulted in a trial against her relating to this classified information, well, then, to use your words, Director, I don't think that there's any reasonable prosecutor out there who would have allowed two immunized witnesses central to the prosecution to proving the case against her to sit in the room with the interview, the FBI interview of the subject of that investigation. And if I heard you earlier today, in your long career, I heard you say that you've never had that circumstance. Did I hear you correctly?
That's correct. But
okay, and I never have either, and I've never met a prosecutor that's ever had that. So, to me, the only way that an interview takes place with the two central witnesses and the subject of the investigation is if the decision has already been made that all three people in that room are not going to be charged.
okay, can I respond?
Yes, please.
I know in our political life sometimes people casually accuse each other of being dishonest, but if colleagues of ours.
So Comey technically was not arrested. He turned himself, he's going to apparently, potentially, possibly, turn himself in voluntarily. But the indictment is about 10 years. So this interaction between John Radcliffe is close to 8 years ago. 7, 8 years ago. And we now have an indictment of Comey and Radcliffe is the CIA chief. And you're listening to the back and forth. What do you think's going to happen? Almost certainly there are going to be indictments on a whole against more superseding indictments with Comey and Brennan, Clapper, Hillary Clinton, and others. Check this out.
Believe I am lying about when I made this decision, please urge them to contact me privately so we can have a conversation about this. All I can do is tell you again, the decision was made after that because I didn't know what was going to happen in that interview. She maybe lied during the interview in a way we could prove. Let me finish. I would also.
This is completely absurd. Comey knew that there was no way. The whole entire investigation of Clinton emails, the 30,000 deleted emails, top secret intel, SAP intel, transferred almost certainly illegally, because there's no legal way to transfer classified top secret intel onto private servers owned by Hillary and, a staff of people working. So unencrypted servers at one point, but private secret servers owned by a diplomat, the nation's top diplomat, the Secretary of State. It is impossible to transfer top secret or classified data onto them. Comey knows this. He knew this then. It was a cover-up. That's pretty obvious. He knew that he was not going to indict Clinton long before the interview with agents that apparently helped set up and frame Michael Flynn, General Flynn, who was an innocent man and a patriot.
Also urge you to tell me what tools we have as prosecutors and investigators to kick out of an interview someone that the subject says is their lawyer.
That's not my point. The interview never should have taken place if you were going to allow the central witnesses that you needed to prove the case to sit there and listen to the testimony that the subject was going to give. It never happens. It never happened to you, and it's never happened to me or any other prosecutor that I met. And I know you've defended the people that were involved in this as being great, but if it's never happened, I wonder why this is a case of first precedent with respect to that practice that you and I have never seen in our careers.
You and I don't control the universe of what's happened. I suspect it's very unusual. A key fact, though, that maybe is leading to some confusion here is we had already concluded we didn't have a prosecutable case against Heather Samuelson or Cheryl Mills at that point. If they were targets of our investigation, maybe we would have canceled the interview. But frankly, our focus was on the subject. The subject at that point was Hillary Clinton.
All right, let me move on. According to the FBI's own documents, Paul Gambetta was, in his first interview on February the 18th, told FBI agents that he had no knowledge about the preservation order for the Clinton emails, correct?
I don't know the dates of that, but I'm sure it's in the 302.
Okay, but then 2.5 months later, on May the 3rd, his second interview, he made a 180-degree turn. And he admitted that, in fact, he was aware of the preservation order, and he was aware of the fact that that meant that he shouldn't disturb the Clinton emails, correct?
Yep.
Okay, well then I need your help again here, because when I was at the Department of Justice, your reward for lying to federal agents was an 18 U.S.C. 1001 charge or potential obstruction of justice charge. It wasn't immunity.
Depends on where you're trying to go with the investigation. It's a low-level guy, and you're trying to move.
A low-level guy, okay. Anyone involved with the servers or with the maintenance of Clinton's servers, how they could be viewed as a low-level individual, that's very interesting.
Up in the chain, you might think about it differently.
Well, he lied to an FBI agent. You don't think that's important?
Oh, it's very important. Happens all the time. Unfortunately, it's very, very important. Sometimes you prosecute that person and end their cooperation. Sometimes you try and sign them up.
But if they lie to an FBI agent...
But Comey didn't try to sign up anyone involved with the Clinton scandal. So it's hilarious.
After they're given immunity, they violated the terms of their immunity agreement.
Oh, sure. After the agreement.
And so that's my point. He shouldn't have immunity anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. I may have misunderstood you. He lied to us before he came clean under the immunity agreement and admitted that he had deleted the emails.
No, not according to the FBI's documents. He had the immunity agreement in December of 2015. These interviews took place in February and March and May of this year, 2016. Gambetta.
Okay, then I'm confused and misremembering, but I don't think that's right.
Okay, well, my time's expired, but
from what I remember, there's some kind of, link between that gentleman and Reddit. Okay, and the Clinton email fiasco. Let's continue.
I have one last question, and I think that's important. At this point, based on everything, do you think that any laws were broken by Hillary Clinton or her lawyers?
Do I think that any laws were broken? Yeah. I don't think there's evidence to establish that.
Okay. Well, I think you're making my point when you say there's no.
Then how on earth was she able to attain emails with classified or top secret or SAP intel? It's literally impossible not to obtain those emails on private servers without breaking the law. But anyway, the Honorable James Comey speaks yet again and almost certainly commits perjury, but let's continue.
No evidence to establish that. Maybe not in the way she handled classified information, but with respect to obstruction of justice. And you've got a pen here. I just want to make sure the record's clear about the evidence that you didn't have, that you can't use to prove. So this comes from the FBI's own report. It says that the FBI didn't have the Clintons' personal Apple server used for Hillary Clinton work emails. That was never located, so the FBI could never examine it. An Apple MacBook laptop and thumb drive that contained Hillary Clinton's email archives was lost, so the FBI never examined that. 2 BlackBerry devices, provided the FBI didn't have SIM cards or SD data cards. 13 Hillary Clinton personal mobile devices were lost, discarded, or destroyed with a hammer, so the FBI clearly didn't examine those. Various server backups were deleted over time, so the FBI didn't examine that. After the State Department and my colleague Mr. Gowdy here notified Ms. Clinton that her records would be sought by the Benghazi Committee, copies of her emails on the laptops of both of her lawyers, Cheryl Mills and Harold Mills, and Heather Samuelson, were wiped clean with bleach bits, so the FBI didn't review that. After those emails were subpoenaed, Hillary Clinton's email archive was also permanently deleted from the Platte River Network with bleach bit, so the FBI didn't review that. And also after the subpoena, backups of the Platte River server were manually deleted. Now, Director, hopefully that list is substantially accurate because it comes from your own documents. My question to you is this: any one of those in that very, very long list, to me, says obstruction of justice. Collectively, they scream obstruction of justice, and to ignore them, I think, really allows not just reasonable prosecutors, but reasonable people to believe that maybe the decision on this was made a long time ago.
Could you imagine if Donald Trump did all of that with secret private servers? And then the Washington Post and New York Times would win 20 Pulitzer Prizes trying to find out, secret love letter emails between Putin and Trump. And it's like they would never rest until they found every single one of Trump's deleted emails in private servers. But with Clinton, it's like, oh, no, don't, there's nothing to see here.
Ago not to prosecute Hillary Clinton. And with that, I yield back.
Director, do you care to respond?
It's very briefly. To ignore that which we don't have, we're in a fact-based world. So we make evaluations based on the evidence we're able to gather. You
don't have the evidence because it was destroyed. This is like Sherlock Holmes meets the Pink Panther, Inspector Clouseau. You don't have the evidence because it was destroyed. You can't live in a fact-based world when evidence is destroyed and then you say, look, we live in a fact-based world. We have to deal with what we have. It's like you had a person who had private servers and then destroyed all the evidence showing intent, which inherent in owning a private server is the intent to deceive. But anyway, this is the precursor to them setting up and framing Trump. You have to understand what took place in the Clinton email cybersecurity nightmare fiasco. That's why Comey was indicted in the first place, really. It's because he covered up the Clinton email investigation and then tanked her campaign with the memo because Uma Abedin, according to Comey, was forwarding classified data to Anthony Weiner's laptop that you couldn't even probably touch with a hazmat suit. And so no Lord knows how that was taking place. But still, they couldn't find anyone committing a crime.
Using the tools that we have. So it's hard for me to react to these things that you don't have. So that's my reaction.
You don't have them because they were destroyed.
To it.
Just Mr. Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chairman. Inspector Horowitz, in your report and now in your testimony, you said that you are deeply troubled and very concerned that the anti-Trump bias reflected in the Strzok Page text messages was so great as to have possibly impacted Peter Strzok's conduct in the Wiener laptop part of the Hillary Clinton investigation. Is that fair?
Correct.
So if the Department of Justice and the FBI's own Inspector General is very concerned and deeply troubled about Peter Strzok's anti-Trump bias affecting his actions as an FBI agent, is it unreasonable for President Trump, as the subject of an investigation, to likewise be very concerned and deeply troubled that Mr. Strzok was put in charge of the Trump-Russia investigation?
I'm going to step back on that, Congressman, and speak to the broader point that that's precisely why we were concerned, generally speaking, about the election review, that those kind of messages create that appearance of bias that undercuts credibility, and
those type of messages that state unmitigated contempt and disdain for Trump could create the possible appearance of impropriety. We wouldn't want to potentially accuse anyone of being overtly biased when they begged the universe to stop Trump from winning, but we would like to encourage less vitriolic rhetoric so as not to have an aura of improper partisanship.
the ability to do investigation. I can't speak to
right. Well, I'm not asking you to make any findings about the Trump-Russia matter. I'm asking you about the people that you investigated in your report, people whose actions you found so deeply troubling and very concerning. I just want to find out if you think it's unreasonable for the president to feel the same way you do.
My concern on that is, as you know, we're currently reviewing that, and I want to be careful. I don't want to be myself seen as prejudging any outcomes here. So I'm going to let folks draw what reasonable inferences they want to draw from this, but I don't want to be seen as making any judgments on that.
Well, do you think it's unreasonable for President Trump to be very concerned or deeply troubled, as you were, that 8 days after Peter Strzok was put in charge of the Trump-Russia investigation, that he promised another FBI employee, Lisa Page, that Trump would never be president because he'd stop it?
I think any individual in this country should be concerned about that kind of language.
I think that any individual should be concerned with that kind of language. Well, what was the language, Inspector General? Oh, it was literally that an FBI agent, two of them, were talking about stopping Donald Trump from becoming president. Gee. And so this is what, okay, the person speaking, John Radcliffe, is now the CIA chief. So almost certainly there will be more indictments, arrests, and you know, it could be in the next 2-3 months or sooner. Potentially, possibly, potentially, like the Honorable James Comey says, potentially.
And the reason you're concerned about that, Inspector General, I think, is because you've said numerous times here that Strzok's stated bias and stated willingness to act on that bias are antithetical to the core values of the FBI, correct? Another thing that's antithetical to the FBI and the Department of Justice and our entire justice system is putting people in charge of investigating people they hate, of people that they are biased against and that they are prejudiced against, right?
Correct.
And we don't do that in our justice system. We can't do that in our justice system, a system where the bedrock principle has to be the fair and impartial administration of justice free from bias and prejudice, right?
Correct.
So I think the point that you're making and that I agree with is that anyone, you, me, any member of Congress, any American who becomes the subject of an investigation should not be investigated by people who have sent hundreds of hateful text messages about them before the investigation ever began and then continued to send them while the investigation was occurring. That is by definition prejudicial to the fair and impartial administration of justice, isn't it?
I think that is precisely the concern.
And yet that is exactly what happened to President Trump. Now, to your credit, Inspector Horwitz, You revealed the astonishing level, the outrageous level of bias and prejudice. And when you did, Special Counsel Mueller removed Peter Strzok from the case. But you and I are former prosecutors, and you and I both know that it is impossible to remove bias and prejudice from all of the actions taken, all of the decisions made, all of the investigative plans implemented, all of the evidence gathered by Peter Strzok and at least 2 other Trump-hating FBI agents and lawyers who were assigned to the investigation. That's pretty hard to do, isn't it?
Well, that is precisely the question, as you know, we're looking at.
So my colleagues over there just keep pointing out that.
And so the IG when so Democrats or media will say, oh, they found no bias. Like, no, he routinely stated he'd found numerous examples of animus and bias against Trump by the people investigating Trump. The IG stated there was no testimonial or documentary. Well, of course, people are not going to write it down or testify. But anyway, there was no testimonial of documentary bias. This is really interesting. This is the CIA chief of today, questioning in Congress one of the people who investigated Trump, who had text messages that showed contempt for Trump.
I thank my colleague for yielding. Agent Strzok, on May the 9th, 2017, President Trump fired FBI Director Jim Comey. That same day, you and FBI lawyer Lisa Page exchanged quite a few texts on the topic. At 8:14 p.m. on that day, you texted Ms. Page and said, quote, "And we need to open the case we've been waiting on now while Andy is acting," end quote. First, is that Andy McCabe, the former deputy director of the FBI who has since been fired and criminally referred by the Inspector General?
It is.
All right.
So this testimony implicates Andrew McCabe and Comey at the same time. Check this out.
And what case are you referring to opening now that Andy is the acting director of the FBI?
Sir, to get into that would relate to ongoing investigations, which, consistent with the department's policy on ongoing investigations and based on the special counsel equities, I'm not authorized to discuss ongoing investigations.
Okay, well, let me see if I can give you a question that you can answer. You sent 4 more texts to Ms. Page, and her first response to you at the bottom of that page you're looking at is, quote, "We need to lock in," and then there's a black mark where someone's name's been redacted. "We need to lock in redacted in a formal, chargeable way, period. Soon, period." Whose name's been blacked out?
Sir, I don't know. I need to see the original list or original text.
You don't know? Okay. Well, I don't know either. Here's what else I don't know. I don't know if the person whose name has been redacted is Republican or Democrat. I don't know if they're black or brown or white.
I don't either, sir.
I don't know their religious beliefs. I don't know their sexual orientation. I don't know those things, and I don't care. But here's what I do know. I do know that decisions about when and whether to open investigations and when and whether to charge people with crimes aren't supposed to depend on who's sitting in the director's chair, or on political decisions, or on the political agendas of FBI agents and lawyers. So if a Trump-hating FBI agent and a Trump-hating FBI lawyer who have talked about effing Trump, stopping Trump, impeaching Trump, are within hours of President Trump firing their boss, if they start talking about opening an investigation now that Andy is acting and that some person needs to be locked in a formal, chargeable way soon, I know, as a former U.S. attorney, that if in fact that's what happened, I know that whoever is the subject of that case that was opened now that Andy is acting, and whoever you and Ms. Page talked about needing to be locked in soon in a formal, chargeable way, well, they would have had their civil liberties violated. They would have been deprived of due process. So my first question to you, you wouldn't answer. My second question to you, you couldn't answer. Let's go for a third question. On page 400 of the Inspector General report, someone tells the Inspector General, quote,
Jordan, thank you so very much. To my super chat, thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Greatly, greatly appreciated. Absolutely, I agree with you.
There is a bright line, a bright and inviolable line between what you think personally and belief and the conduct of your official business. Who said that?
I believe I did, sir.
You did say that. And I heard you say similar things last week. I heard you say similar things today. You said it very clearly. You said it very unequivocally in your opening remarks that you never crossed that inviolable line in 26 years. Earlier today, in response to a question, you said, I took my personal belief out of every official action. So you're asking us to believe that when you say things like F Trump and stop Trump and impeach Trump, that those are just personal beliefs.
Could you imagine if those things were said about Hillary or Biden or Harris or any other Democrat? Could you imagine? Could you imagine what everyone from the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, could you imagine if Trump and Republicans treated Democrats the way Democrats have treated Trump and other Republicans? It would be, the indignation would be 10 times worse than what we already see from Democrats.
And that when you say those things, you never cross that line, that bright, inviolable line, and allow it to impact your official conduct. That's really what this comes down to, that you're asking us to believe, isn't it?
Sir, I'm asking you to believe, and I'm offering you evidence.
Yeah, well, you
whether
have.
It's the IG report, whether it's anything that's been found, that there's been no active bias found anywhere.
You have under oath.
But that's not true. The IG never said that. And if anything, the IG said there were numerous examples of bias. That's why one of the agents was removed from the Mueller probe. Or 2 agents were removed from the Mueller probe.
It's been as clear as a bell on that. You've said it over and over again. And because of that, I'm almost embarrassed to ask you this question. Of the approximately 50,000 text messages that I've seen with your personal beliefs like F Trump, stop Trump, impeach Trump, go ahead and confirm on the record that none of that occurred on an official FBI device or on official FBI time. Go ahead and do that.
Sir, no, they did. Many of them did.
Oh, they did. Okay, so
50,000, sir.
So really, no, I'll give you a chance at the end. So what you really meant to say was that when you said you never crossed that bright, inviolable line, what you meant to say was, except for 50,000 times, except for hundreds of times a day where I went back and forth, expressing my personal opinions about effing Trump and stopping Trump and impeaching Trump on official FBI phones, on official FBI time. Other than that, you never cross that line.
Again, this is the current CIA chief. Nobody could have imagined at that point 7 years ago or 8 years ago when this took place. Nobody could have imagined that John Radcliffe would be the CIA chief. So, I mean, this is a complete paradigm shift.
I'm sure there are 13,000 FBI agents out there that are beaming with pride at how clearly you've drawn that line. Agent Strucker, you're starting to understand why some folks out there don't believe a word you say, and why it's especially troubling that you, of all people, are at the center of the 3 highest profile investigations in recent times that involve President Trump, and that you were in charge of an investigation investigating, gathering evidence against Donald Trump, a subject that you hated, that you wanted to F him, to stop him, to impeach him. And do you see why that might call into question everything you've touched on all of those investigations? Chairman, I'm done with this witness and I yield back.
And we get to Andrew McCabe. You heard, I mean, this is the CIA chief. So you just do the math on that.
Congressman. And we learned some information this week on 2 fronts. The Senate told us that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia after 2 years of investigating this. And number 2, Andrew McCabe, the former deputy director at the FBI, in an interview with 60 Minutes tonight.
Leyland, thank you. Potentially, possibly. Leyland, thank you so very much. To my super chat. I can't thank you enough, everybody. Yes, it's happening. Finally, Leyland, thank you. Leyland and Jordan, Thank you so very, very much.
Said that he launched the investigation into President Trump. Your reaction?
Well, as to the collusion issue, the Senate just confirmed what the House and every other investigative committee has found, which is no evidence of collusion. And as you mentioned, Maria, the only person in Washington so far that says they have evidence of collusion between Donald Trump and the Trump campaign and Russia is Adam Schiff. And of course, he says that is evidence that is neither direct evidence or circumstantial evidence, which are the only two types of evidence that exist in the law. So we'll wait on that. But as to the issue of Andy McCabe, he may be a disgraced former FBI agent who's been criminally referred for lying, but he's going to make at least one truthful statement in this.
Lying about what? Well, exactly what Comey was indicted for. Okay, and now we get to the Comey indictment. And if you look at page 28 of the OIG report, talking about the leak, and I did a video on this that nobody cared about, which is fine. You know, I'm just a tiny little voice in the wilderness. Nobody really, that's fine. But on page 28, McCabe's lawyers explain in the footnote, or McCabe, his counsel talked about why Comey should not be believed. Okay, so when people say, well, McCabe was, can't be trusted on this, like they lied all the time. All of them did. They were in between cover up after cover up and then turning on each other. It's like a criminal organization or a mafia, like they're all turning on each other. The point is what happened, which was that leaks took place all the time, almost certainly because either Comey gave the supervision authorization or allowed the leaks and had no problem with them, which is also giving tacit approval or authorization as well. McCabe is on record numerous times saying Comey gave him authorization. Whether he told Comey about the leak after he leaked is irrelevant, because if they spoke and Comey's like, oh yeah, good job, which is what McCabe said, then essentially that's authorizing, or it's acknowledging there's a culture of leaking information under Comey's watch.
Interview tonight. Many of us have been saying for the last year that senior leaders at the FBI and the Department of Justice have been secretly investigating Donald Trump and trying to remove him from office. Tonight, Andy McCabe will tell you that he and other senior leaders at the Department of Justice and the FBI were secretly investigating Donald Trump and trying to remove him from office. Now, once you get past that one truthful statement, the rest of his story, frankly, has bigger holes in it than the Titanic.
Well, I mean, look, we heard from Bruce Orr in that other testimony a couple of weeks ago when he did tell us that, in fact, he met with the Fusion GPS founder as early as August of 2016, and we did get that testimony was quite illuminating in terms of what did go on.
It did, and we've gotten a lot of testimony. As you pointed out, Maria, as a former federal prosecutor, I will tell you that as a conspiracy starts to unravel, sometimes the co-conspirators turn on one another, and you get inconsistent testimony. Bruce Orr's testimony is inconsistent with his boss, Sally Yates. Andy McCabe's testimony is inconsistent with his boss, Jim Comey. Jim Comey's testimony is inconsistent with his lawyer, Jim Baker. McCabe's testimony is also inconsistent with Rod Rosenstein. So you have all of these.
He was talking about indicting people on conspiracy statutes 6 years ago. This is Radcliffe 6 years ago. Check this out again. I mean, this should be played on continual loop. I guess it can't. I guess President Trump can't because John Ratcliffe is a CIA director. But check this out.
In terms of what did go on.
It did, and we've gotten a lot of testimony. As you pointed out, Maria, as a former federal prosecutor, I will tell you that as a conspiracy starts to unravel, sometimes the co-conspirators turn on one another, and you get inconsistent testimony. Bruce Orr's testimony is inconsistent with his boss, Sally Yates. Andy McCabe's testimony is inconsistent with his boss, Jim Comey. Jim Comey's testimony is inconsistent with his lawyer, Jim Baker. McCabe's testimony is also inconsistent with Rod Rosenstein. So you have all of these things that were taking place, and again, it underscores the point that there were senior officials at the Department of Justice that were the same officials that had undermined and prejudged Hillary Clinton as innocent, prejudged Donald Trump as guilty. Right. And they were the ones making the decisions in these investigations.
So here we are beginning week one for the new Attorney General. He is now in the job, Bill Barr. Tell us about what.
So check this out. And this is going to undermine Comey's defense. Check this out.
Go ahead. I was going to say one of the points that I think your viewers need to take away from today, Sean, is something that folks haven't really talked about. I know they're not going to read the whole IG report, but they can go to page 60, the conclusion of the Inspector General, and it tells you everything you need to know about Jim Comey and every decision that he made throughout all of these investigations. The Inspector General, the Obama-appointed Inspector General watchdog, said that Jim Comey did the one thing that any FBI agent, much less an FBI director, should ever do, which is allow their personal opinions, their personal animus, their personal desires to influence official conduct. And Jim Comey promised us that he never did that. But on page 60, the Inspector General, literally all of the actions and all of the decisions made by Jim Comey's FBI throughout his tenure.
This is such a narrow sliver of what will be cascading amounts of information that are coming in. But to stay with you, Congressman Ratcliffe, because we now know the Inspector General, his big report that's coming on FISA abuse. We know that the information from the Nunes report, who's sitting right there, and from the Grassley-Graham report, that the bulk of information to obtain those warrants was Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for dirty dossier, that James Comey in particular and the FBI and DOJ were warned on multiple occasions that Steele had a political agenda, Hillary paid for it, and none of it's verified. Now, if the top of the FISA application says verified, and you go with unverifiable information, does that to you mean perjury, premeditated fraud on a court, denying constitutional rights of other citizens, obstruction of real justice? Do all those laws now come into play based on your knowledge of FISA applications?
Sean, I think anyone that worked on and signed off on those FISA applications is going to get tremendous scrutiny and should for that reason. The Steele dossier, I can tell you, was front and center in that FISA application. But beyond that, and back to Jim Comey and some of the decisions that were made, information that was not in there that I have seen.
This also is part of the indictments that are upcoming. Exculpatory evidence. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. Close to 1,000 live viewers. Thank you, everybody. And also subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel. That'll be below in the description. It's in the description of the last live stream as well. And on the homepage of this channel, I have my first segment up on there in years. So check that out. Talks about the upcoming indictment of Hillary Clinton. Check this out, ladies and gentlemen. Exculpatory evidence was withheld by Comey and others. This is criminal.
Exculpatory information that was not presented to the court and that the court should have been allowed to look at. The Steele dossier, as bad as it was, at least the judges were able to look at it and determine the weight and sufficiency of that evidence. The bigger problem for a lot of folks is there was exculpatory information that wasn't presented to the court.
Right. Also, little birdie's beginning to tell me I might be over another target, Mark Meadows, and that is.
So let's fast forward to today, 2025. Check this out.
So important and why there can be accountability and preventability to prevent these same people that did it in 2016 with the Steele dossier, with the Hunter Biden laptop in 2020 from doing it again in the future.
So what I think I hear you saying is there is still an opportunity for indictments, potential prosecutions, accountability from those people who may have lied under oath, like John Brennan, James Comey, and perhaps Hillary Clinton.
Well, that's why I've made the referrals that I have. DNI Gabbard has made referrals, and why we're going to continue to share the intelligence that would support the ability of our Department of Justice to make bring fair and just claims against those who have perpetrated this hoax against the American people and this stain on our country.
Director, one other question on this. Tulsi, as well as President Trump, used the word treason. Is there a statute of limitations on treason?
Well, Maria, what I would say is this, is there is no doubt in my mind that the people that we just talked about conspired. They conspired against President Trump. They conspired against the American people. And so I'll leave it to Pam Bondi and our Department of Justice, Kash Patel and our FBI to investigate the conspiracy to do what and what charges that they're capable of bringing. But again, I don't think statute of limitations are going to impact, because in a conspiracy, Maria, the statute of limitation doesn't start to run until the last act in furtherance of that conspiracy. And Maria, part of why this is so important is the people behind this are still furthering the conspiracy. They're refusing to admit or acknowledge what they did in 2016 and what they did in 2020 was wrong.
So I want to make it clear, crystal clear to everybody watching, okay? I am not simply championing the CIA chief because of political, because I want my political side to win, okay? If John Radcliffe set up and framed, like John Brennan did, an incoming Democrat, I wouldn't like that, even though the Democratic Party is like the worst thing for the country in my view. But I wouldn't want that. You see, if Trump had acted like Democrats, if John Ratcliffe had acted like John Brennan, if Tulsi Gabbard had acted like James Clapper, if Kash Patel had acted like James Comey, I wouldn't be defending that behavior. I wouldn't be defending Giuliani and Trump purchasing the Hillary dossier or the Harris dossier or the Biden dossier. They don't even need dossiers. They have their own emails that are they cheated Bernie Sanders. They have Hunter's laptop. They don't even need contrived, fabricated dossiers. We have all the evidence anyway, and we couldn't talk about it. But see, I am not the way that wonderful, morally superior, highly educated Democrats operate is that they gravitate towards political power at all costs, which means you have communists and socialists defending a former FBI chief who used a dossier purchased by Hillary Clinton to frame and set up innocent people. So when if the viewpoint is, oh, well, you just like John Ratcliffe because he's on your side. He's not on my side. He's on the side of finding out what actually took place. That could also be called the truth. The truth is that Trump was set up. The truth is that people committed crimes setting up and framing Trump and creating a new Cold War. So that's primarily why he's doing the right thing. And the way Democrats work is anything that anyone does on their side will always back. That's why I would not, if it's Chris Christie or if it's Nikki Haley, I wouldn't vote. I wouldn't, even though I vote Republican and I'm conservative on almost everything now, I wouldn't vote for Nikki Haley. Democrats would vote for Liz Cheney. Even the, you could find the leftiest, communist, socialist, they'd vote for Nikki Haley. I mean, they'd vote for Nikki Haley or Liz Cheney if they were the Democratic nominee. That is cult-like behavior. Not me. Not most Trump supporters. People like Trump. I like Trump because of his foreign policy, because of his domestic policy, because of his economic policy. Okay, the tariffs make sense. They're going to bring jobs back. They've already helped the country. The economy is doing very well, or a lot better than it was under Biden. Okay, prices increased 21% under Biden. And we can go on forever. Countries were invaded under Biden. And so we can go on forever. Trump is against never-ending military conflict. That's why I like Trump. That's the point. So Nikki Haley or Chris Christie or Liz Cheney or never Trump Republicans, I would never vote for, even though I vote Republican, all the time now. That's the difference between me and a morally superior, highly educated Democrat, and the difference between you and a morally superior, highly educated Democrat who will vote for if Liz Cheney if they cheated their candidate as always, and in the Democratic primary, Liz Cheney became the Democratic nominee, everyone on the furthest fringes of the left would vote for Liz Cheney. That's the American political dynamic.
And so I think that's why this is so important, and why I'm excited about what the American people will see very shortly and what's to continue to come.
We'll wait for that John Durham report and the annexed classified.
So he's telling everybody there's going to be indictments. Oh, a whole lot of indictments. Okay. Well, let's check this out. Hold on one second. Let's check this out right here.
Of synthetic opioids, like partial administration of justice free from bias and prejudice, right?
Correct.
So I think the point that you're making, and that I agree with, is that anyone, you, me, any member of Congress, any American who becomes the subject of an investigation should not be investigated by people who have sent hundreds of hateful text messages about them before the investigation ever began, and then continued to send them while the OMB and DHS report identified 4 main actions that are necessary to address cybersecurity risks across the federal enterprise. DHS's CDM program can assist with this issue.
All right, finally, ladies and gentlemen, listen to this. Kind of hilarious, kind of amusing. Check this out.
I will tell you from my investigation, which I used Brian Karam, who's a 30-year White House correspondent, to speak to people inside government because they wouldn't talk to me. I've learned that Comey was actually very much involved in the Russia investigation in a very negative way. And chances are this DOJ has every single email, every text message, every communication. I believe likely he will be found guilty.
Nearly home. Just need more.
So, it's bad news when Michael Cohen is like, likely he'll be found guilty, likely. I can't do the accent. I don't know why I can't. But anyway, Michael Cohen says that James Comey will be found guilty. Hit subscribe to this channel. It's happening. And Comey's not only indicted, other people. If James Comey's going to be indicted, do you think he's going to be the only person indicted? When even President Trump said he wasn't, the ringleader was really John Brennan, almost certainly. Well, actually, Hillary Clinton. But, well, it could have been James Comey. They were all equally. Well, they all essentially worked for Hillary Clinton and the DNC. So, but anyway, hit subscribe to this channel, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you all. God bless America. And again, my thing is, I'm not trying to. I look at things like when I was the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to Huffington Post. I was the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. You can read my writing at hagoodman.com. In the Hill, the Huffington, I was a contributor in the Hill, Huffington Post Salon, Federalist. You can read my articles in the Federalist. The point is, I used to be on the left my whole life. When I was on the left, people tried to insult me because I said, yeah, Clinton was going to get indicted because there's no way to transfer top secret intel onto servers. They couldn't fathom that their political side had a candidate that cheated Bernie Sanders, who was probably in on the whole charade because they don't even have functioning primaries. They couldn't fathom that Clinton would ever be indicted. They couldn't fathom that James Comey. They were still to this day obsessed with political power, obsessed to the point where it's absurd. It's completely ridiculous that anyone on their political side would be indicted. And it's equally just as ridiculous that Trump or anybody associated with Trump would be livid or indignant that they were accused of things they didn't do. And so for me, it's not tribalism. I'm against tribalism, partisan, like extreme partisanship. You know, if Trump did to Democrats what Democrats did to him, I wouldn't defend President Trump. But see, he was the victim of what took place. I saw it in 2016. They did whatever they did to President Trump, they did on a smaller scale, a much smaller scale to Bernie Sanders. The difference is Bernie Sanders was accepting of all the corruption and all the treachery. That's why he said nothing about being cheated in a primary that doesn't. Look what they did to Biden. What they did to Biden is infinitely worse than what they did to Bernie Sanders. But Trump, he don't play. He listens to James Brown, the big payback. Anyway, hit subscribe. Check out H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. It'll be in the description and the pinned comment. Subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel below